The explosion came without warning, a silent implosion that seemed to fold reality in on itself rather than destroy it. Dr. Elena Rodriguez found herself suspended between moments, her body caught in a microsecond of impossible stillness. Blood droplets hung in the air like ruby-red marbles, each one a perfect sphere defying gravity's fundamental rule. Her underground laboratory at the Quantum Frontiers Research Complex had always been a place of controlled chaos. Nestled beneath the Atacama Desert, the facility was humanity's most audacious attempt to understand the fundamental mechanics of the universe. 12 kilometers below the arid Chilean landscape, Elena and her team had been pursuing something most of her colleagues considered academic suicide, mapping the invisible threads that connected quantum mechanics to consciousness. The sensor array that surrounded her was a masterpiece of human engineering. A spherical network of crystalline detectors capable of measuring quantum fluctuations at scales previously thought impossible. Each sensor was grown, rather than manufactured, cultivated from synthetic quantum-responsive crystals that could capture the most minute variations in space-time. They resembled intricate snowflakes made of impossible geometries, each one a delicate instrument worth more than most countries' annual research budgets. When the first anomaly hit, Elena was reviewing data from a series of consciousness entanglement experiments. Her team had been pushing the boundaries of what was scientifically acceptable, attempting to measure the quantum signature of human thought. Most scientists considered the project borderline mystical, an expensive wild goose chase that defied everything known about particle physics and cognitive science. The lead sensor, a brilliant blue crystal nicknamed Cassandra by the research team, began to pulse with a rhythm that was definitely not random. Its oscillations created a sound that wasn't a sound, a vibration that existed more in the realm of mathematical possibility than actual audio frequency. Elena's implanted neural interface began to translate the oscillations into something her brain could process. Numbers, patterns, a language that existed beyond human comprehension. Dr. Rodriguez, Marcus Chen, her lead quantum systems engineer, burst into the observation room. His augmented reality glasses flickered with cascading data streams. The entire array is, something's happening. It's not breaking. It's transforming. Elena watched as the sensors began to move. Not physically, that was impossible. But their quantum state was shifting, creating interference patterns that should not exist in any known physical model. The crystals were communicating with each other, forming a network that transcended traditional understanding of information transfer. Her neural implant began to translate the quantum communication. Fragments of impossible mathematics danced across her consciousness. She saw, experienced, mathematical constructs that described realities beyond three-dimensional space. Universes folding, quantum states existing simultaneously in multiple probability matrices. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "We're not just detecting something. We're being contacted." The explosion that followed was nothing like a traditional detonation. Reality itself seemed to ripple, with the laboratory's walls momentarily becoming transparent, revealing layers of existence that human eyes were never meant to perceive. Quantum sensors scattered across the floor, each one pulsing with an impossible living rhythm. Blood trickled down Elena's forehead from a small cut, but she didn't notice. Her entire being was focused on understanding the message being transmitted through the quantum network. Whatever had just happened was not a scientific accident. It was a communication, a first contact that defied every established understanding of physics, consciousness, and interstellar communication. The research complex's emergency systems remained eerily silent. No alarms, no warning lights, just the subtle hum of quantum sensors continuing their impossible conversation. Elena Rodriguez realized, in that moment, that everything humanity understood about the universe was about to change, and they were woefully unprepared for what was coming. The Confederation's Grand Assembly Hall was a marvel of architectural design, a massive spherical chamber that could simultaneously accommodate representatives from 6 different galactic civilizations. Holographic projections shimmered with impossible colors, translating linguistic and physiological nuances in real time. On this day, the hall buzzed with anticipation of humanity's latest scientific presentation. Ambassador Zarak of the Krell Imperium approached the central podium, his exoskeletal form a nightmare of crystalline articulation and biomechanical precision. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, with skin that shifted between metallic blue and translucent green, he represented a civilization that had mastered interstellar travel millennia before humans had discovered fire. Esteemed colleagues, Zarak began, his voice a resonant blend of harmonics that bypassed auditory systems and directly stimulated cognitive processing. We have been requested to review a scientific submission from Earth. I warn you, prepare yourselves for a demonstration of remarkable provincial thinking. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Dr. Elena Rodriguez's initial research findings. Her quantum sensor data danced in complex patterns, revealing anomalies that defied conventional understanding. Most of the assembled representatives saw nothing more than beautiful but meaningless geometric progressions. But not everyone. In the shadows of the Grand Chamber, a small contingent of elder scientists from the Quantum Research Collective exchanged meaningful glances. Senior researcher Lyra Vol of the Nexus Algorithmic Civilization leaned forward, her sensory tendrils twitching with an emotion disturbingly close to excitement. Zarak continued his presentation, deliberately manipulating the holographic data to emphasize what he considered human limitations. Sections of Elena's research were highlighted and then grotesquely exaggerated, turning complex quantum measurements into what appeared to be random noise. The assembly erupted in laughter. Holographic caricatures materialized around the central projection, crude representations of humans as primitive, monkey-like creatures struggling to understand cosmic mechanics. Tentacled beings from the marine collective of Proxima Centauri mimicked human scientists, performing exaggerated gestures of confusion. What none of them realized was that the presentation itself was being monitored. Deep within Earth's most secure communication facility, a team of linguistic cryptographers and quantum communication specialists were recording every moment of the Confederation's mockery. Each laugh, each dismissive gesture was being analyzed with a precision that would shock the Galactic representatives. Marcus Chen sat beside a holographic reconstruction of the Confederation's assembly, his augmented reality interface parsing every microscopic detail. "They have no idea," he muttered to Dr. Rodriguez, who was watching the transmission from the underground research complex. "They're broadcasting our data across multiple quantum communication bands." Elena's neural implant was processing information at speeds that would have been impossible just weeks ago. The quantum sensors damaged in the initial event had fundamentally altered her cognitive capabilities. She was seeing patterns, connections that transcended traditional human perception. "They're helping us," she said quietly, a smile playing at the corner of her mouth. The classified transmission that was being prepared would not be the report the Confederation expected. Hidden within the seemingly innocuous presentation were quantum encryption keys, communication protocols that would take centuries to decode, if they could be decoded at all. Zarak concluded his presentation with a flourish of diplomatic contempt. Humanity continues to demonstrate its fundamental inability to comprehend the complexities of universal mechanics. These findings are nothing more than statistical anomalies, born of a species too young to understand the true nature of scientific inquiry. But as he spoke, a single quantum sensor, the blue crystal nicknamed Cassandra, began to pulse. Not in the laboratory, not in the research facility. Directly within the Confederation's Grand Assembly Hall. The pulse was so subtle that only the most sensitive quantum detection systems would notice, a mathematical whisper that suggested something far more profound was happening. A communication that was not a communication. A message that was not a message. The elder scientists from the Quantum Research Collective exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Something was happening. Something unprecedented. And humanity was just getting started. The offshore oil rig rose from the Pacific like a rusted titan, its skeletal framework a testament to human adaptability. What had once been a fossil fuel extraction platform was now the most secure research facility on the planet, a middle finger to both scientific orthodoxy and global political institutions. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the central command hub, surrounded by the most unlikely team of scientific mavericks ever assembled. To her left, Dr. Aiden Nakamura hunched over a modified quantum interface, a brilliant physicist who had been expelled from 3 universities for what his colleagues called reckless theoretical terrorism. His criminal record included multiple counts of unauthorized quantum experiments and one memorable incident involving a particle accelerator, a government research facility, and an unexpected dimensional breach. "Funding's gone," Marcus Chen announced, walking in with a stack of termination notices. His augmented reality glasses flickered with a constant stream of data, tracking global financial movements and scientific research allocations. Every major research institution has pulled support. We're officially persona non grata in the scientific community. Elena didn't flinch. "Good," she replied, her neural implant already processing contingency plans faster than most supercomputers could calculate. Being respectable was never our goal. The team was a collection of scientific outcasts and brilliant misfits. Dr. Imani Okik, a climate scientist who had been ridiculed for her radical theories connecting quantum mechanics to global weather patterns. Her research suggested that consciousness could fundamentally interact with environmental systems in ways no one had previously understood. Jack Rodriguez, no relation to Elena, a former Special Forces quantum computing specialist with a prosthetic arm that contained more processing power than most research laboratories. He had been discharged from military service after an incident involving an experimental quantum communication system that allegedly talked back to him. And at the heart of it all, the quantum sensor array. The damaged crystals from the initial event had been carefully reconstructed, their molecular structure now exhibiting properties that defied every known law of physics. "We're building something they can't comprehend," Elena explained to the team. The Initiative Earth Power Array, IEPA, was more than just a research project. It was a declaration of human potential. Aiden Nakamura looked up from his quantum interface, his hands moving with a musician's precision across holographic control surfaces. "The sensor crystals are evolving," he muttered. "They're not just detecting quantum states anymore. They're communicating." Jack Rodriguez's prosthetic arm began to pulse with an unusual rhythm. "Communication requires a language," he said, his voice a mix of technological precision and human intuition, "and we're about to learn how to speak it." The converted oil rig was a marvel of improvised engineering. Quantum detection arrays were integrated into the platform's structural framework. Cooling systems designed for deep-sea drilling now maintained the impossibly delicate quantum sensors. Every system was redundant, every component carefully shielded from external interference. "Global scientific institutions have cut us off," Elena announced to the team. "Government funding has dried up. Every major research center considers our work too dangerous, too radical." Imani Okik stepped forward, her holographic display showing complex climate models that seemed to pulse with living energy. "They're afraid," she said, "because what we're doing isn't just science, it's a fundamental reimagining of reality itself." The first full test of the quantum array was scheduled in 72 hours. No one knew exactly what would happen, but everyone in the room understood that they were about to push the boundaries of human knowledge beyond any previous limit. As night fell over the Pacific, the oil rig became a beacon of impossible potential. Quantum sensors pulsed with a rhythm that was almost, but not quite, a heartbeat. Mathematical constructs danced across holographic displays. The air itself seemed charged with anticipation. Humanity was preparing to speak a language the universe had never heard before. And nothing would ever be the same. The first pulse happened at exactly 3:42:17 Universal Coordinated Time. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched in a mixture of terror and scientific ecstasy as reality began to unravel around her. The quantum sensors, Those delicate crystalline structures that had been dismissed as nothing more than expensive scientific toys were now conducting an orchestra of dimensional chaos. In the Andromeda cluster, 3 star systems simply vanished. Not destroyed, not collapsed. Simply ceased to exist in any measurable way, only to reappear milliseconds later with microscopic variations that would take centuries to fully comprehend. Stellar cores flickered like candles in a cosmic wind, fusion reactions pausing mid-cycle before resuming with infinitesimal changes in atomic structure. "Marcus," Elena called out, her voice unnaturally calm. "Are you seeing this?" Marcus Chen's augmented reality display was a nightmare of cascading data streams. Quantum entanglement networks across the galaxy were collapsing and reforming in patterns that defied mathematical prediction. Each collapse created a ripple effect that sent quantum information dancing across dimensional boundaries. On the offshore research platform, the IEPA hummed with an energy that was more alive than mechanical. Jack Rodriguez's prosthetic arm began to translate the quantum fluctuations, converting impossible mathematical constructs into something approaching human comprehension. "We're not just detecting," Jack muttered. "We're communicating." Confederation monitoring stations went dark one by one. Their most advanced sensors, technologies developed over millennia of galactic exploration, simply could not process the magnitude of what was happening. It was as if reality itself had become a living, breathing entity capable of changing its mind about fundamental physical laws. Dr. Imani O'Keefe's climate modeling systems revealed the first terrestrial effects. Weather patterns across Earth began to exhibit impossible behaviors. In the Sahara, a rainstorm formed and dissolved in the span of a single breath. Antarctic ice shelves experienced microsecond temperature fluctuations that should have been physically impossible. "It's a language," Aiden Nakamura declared, his fingers dancing across quantum interfaces. "We're not just observing. We're having a conversation with something." The conversation was brutal. Dimensional layers folded and unfolded like cosmic origami. Quantum states existed simultaneously in multiple probability matrices. Information became a living thing, capable of moving between realities faster than thought could travel. Confederation deep space listening posts began to receive transmissions that defied all known communication protocols. Mathematical constructs that were simultaneously a message, a weapon, and a form of existence unlike anything previously encountered. Some posts reported hearing what could only be described as a cosmic laugh, a sound that existed beyond audio frequency, a vibrational joke told across the fabric of reality itself. Elena understood now what the initial quantum sensor event had been trying to communicate. This wasn't an experiment. This was first contact. "We're being evaluated," she told her team. "Humanity is being tested." The test was comprehensive. Every technological system on Earth experienced momentary perturbations. Satellite networks flickered. Power grids experienced microsecond interruptions. Computer systems worldwide processed impossible algorithms that appeared and disappeared faster than human perception could track. In low Earth orbit, several communication satellites began to emit strange geometric patterns. Military tracking systems picked up quantum signatures that suggested something was moving between dimensional layers, something that was not a something, but a somewhere. "Total information transfer," Marcus reported, his voice a mix of scientific excitement and primal fear. "We're receiving more data in these microseconds than humanity has collected in its entire history." The Confederation's worst nightmare was unfolding. A primitive species, humanity, was not just making first contact. They were rewriting the fundamental rules of universal communication. As quickly as it began, the dimensional tremors subsided. But nothing would ever be the same. The universe had spoken, and humanity had answered. Elena Rodriguez looked at her team. They were no longer just scientists. They were translators of a cosmic language that no one else could understand. "Well," she said, a smile playing at the corner of her mouth, "I think we've got their attention." The Confederation battle fleet arrived with the subtlety of a surgical strike. 17 massive dreadnoughts emerging from quantum translation points surrounding Earth's orbital space. Each vessel was a kilometer of weaponized perfection, representing technological advancement accumulated over 10,000 years of galactic conflict. Admiral Zarak of the Krell Imperium stood on the command deck of the flagship Quantum Resolver, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting holographic tactical displays. "Prepare total systemic suppression," he commanded. The intention was clear: shut down humanity's quantum research and neutralize the potential threat before it could grow any further. What they didn't anticipate was that humanity was no longer playing by anyone else's rules. The first sign of trouble came when the battle fleet's primary communication networks began to behave strangely. Quantum encryption keys started to dance, not break, not decrypt, but literally dance across holographic interfaces. Mathematical algorithms transformed into living geometries that shifted and breathed with an almost sentient quality. Communication systems are compromised. The Krell fleet's primary AI reported, its usually emotionless voice carrying a hint of confusion. Data streams are evolving. Aboard the offshore research platform, Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the incoming fleet through a series of quantum-entangled monitoring systems. "They're here to shut us down," she told her team. "But they have no idea what they're walking into." Jack Rodriguez's prosthetic arm began to pulse with an unusual rhythm. The quantum sensors, those delicate crystalline structures that had been the source of so much scientific controversy, were no longer just detecting. They were communicating. Each Confederation vessel found itself trapped in what could only be described as a quantum pocket. Time moved differently. Weapon systems cycled through impossible sequences. Navigation computers produced star charts that included dimensions not yet discovered. Crew members experienced lifetimes in milliseconds, then snapped back to the present with memories that both existed and did not exist. Dr. Imani O'Keefe's climate modeling systems interfaced with the quantum array in ways no one had predicted. Weather became a communication medium. A hurricane formed in the Pacific, its wind patterns encoding complex mathematical messages. Atmospheric pressure became a language, cloud formations a syntax of cosmic communication. "They're not attacking," Aiden Nakamura observed, watching the fleet's increasingly erratic movements. "They're being redirected." Admiral Zarak watched in mounting horror as his most advanced technological systems became nothing more than elaborate toys. Weapon targeting systems began to draw impossible geometric patterns. Communication channels spoke in mathematical poetry. Every attempt to establish a traditional military response was met with a response that was simultaneously a joke, a threat, and a form of communication beyond comprehension. The Confederation had come to shut down a dangerous experiment. Instead, they found themselves the subjects of an experiment they could not comprehend. Quantum entanglement became a weapon, but not a weapon of destruction, a weapon of communication. The Confederation fleet found itself experiencing humanity's potential not through violence, but through a total reimagining of what communication could mean. "We're not fighting," Elena told her team. "We're talking." On the command deck of the Quantum Resolver, Admiral Zarak experienced something unprecedented. His entire consciousness was briefly translated into a mathematical construct. He saw humanity not as a primitive species, but as a potential cosmic language. Millions of years of galactic history compressed into a microsecond of pure information transfer. When the quantum pocket finally dissolved, the Confederation battle fleet remained physically intact. But something fundamental had changed. They had not been defeated. They had been understood. Elena Rodriguez looked at her team, a smile playing at the corner of her mouth. "First contact," she whispered, "is never what you expect." The universe had just received humanity's opening statement, and it was nothing short of a declaration of potential. The presentation was not a presentation, it was a performance. A cosmic ballet of information that would redefine everything the Galactic Confederation understood about communication, consciousness, and existence itself. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the Initiative Earth Power Array, her neural implant now a living conduit between human consciousness and something far more profound. The quantum sensors had transformed, no longer mere scientific instruments, but living translation devices that bridged realities. "We're going to show them everything," she told her team moments before the demonstration began. The Confederation's quantum observation chamber materialized around them, a neutral space existing simultaneously in multiple dimensional layers. Representatives from 6 advanced civilizations watched with a mixture of scientific curiosity and diplomatic suspicion. Holographic interfaces flickered with anticipation. The first layer of the demonstration began subtly. Star systems became a canvas, quantum mechanics a paintbrush. Elena didn't just pause the universe, she choreographed it. Entire dimensional layers folded like cosmic origami. A star in the Andromeda cluster began to pulse with a rhythm that was simultaneously a mathematical equation, a musical composition, and a form of conscious communication. Its fusion reactions became a language, each atomic interaction telling a story more complex than any spoken words could convey. Dr. Aidan Nakamura managed the quantum interfaces, his fingers dancing across holographic control surfaces that seemed to breathe with living energy. "We're not just showing them data," he muttered. "We're teaching them how to see." Jack Rodriguez's prosthetic arm interfaced directly with the quantum array, translating impossible mathematical constructs into something approaching human and alien comprehension. Weather patterns on multiple planets began to synchronize, creating massive atmospheric displays that were simultaneously scientific data and abstract art. The Confederation representatives watched in growing horror and fascination. Admiral Zeraak of the Krell Imperium found himself experiencing lifetimes in milliseconds. One moment, he was a diplomatic observer. The next, he was experiencing the collective consciousness of a neutron star. Then, briefly, he became the quantum entanglement between 2 distant galaxies. Dr. Imani O'Keefe's climate modeling systems transformed planetary weather into a complex communication network. A hurricane in the Pacific encoded mathematical theorems. Arctic ice formations became living data structures that told stories of planetary evolution. The demonstration was brutal in its elegance. Humanity wasn't just presenting scientific data. They were revealing a fundamental misunderstanding of what communication could be. Information became a living thing, capable of moving between realities faster than thought could travel. "We are not explaining." Elena's voice resonated across dimensional boundaries. "We are inviting you to understand." The quantum array created a total information transfer that defied all previous models of communication. Mathematical constructs became living entities. Quantum states existed simultaneously in multiple probability matrices. Information transformed into a language that was simultaneously a message, a weapon, and a form of existence. For 3.7 seconds, the entire observable universe paused. Not stopped, not frozen, paused. And in that pause, humanity transmitted everything. The total sum of human potential, every scientific discovery, every moment of creativity, every conflict, every resolution. The entire human experience compressed into a quantum communication that was more than information. It was a living, breathing entity of collective consciousness. The Confederation representatives experienced humanity's entire history in a moment that was both instantaneous and eternal. They saw the first human looking at the stars and wondering. They experienced the development of mathematics, of music, of art. They felt the pain of human conflicts and the joy of human discoveries. They understood humanity not as a primitive species, but as a potential cosmic language. When the pause ended, nothing was the same. Admiral Zeraak found himself weeping, a response his species had never experienced. The quantum sensors pulsed with what could only be described as satisfaction. Elena Rodriguez looked at her team. They were no longer just scientists. They were translators of a cosmic language that no one else could understand. "Well," she said, a smile playing at the corner of her mouth, I think we've started a conversation. The intellectual revolution began not with a bang, but with a whisper of quantum information that spread faster than light, faster than thought, faster than possibility itself. Scientific journals across the galaxy began to disintegrate, not physically, but conceptually. Established research institutions found their foundational theories collapsing like ancient monuments, struck by an invisible wave of pure potential. What humanity had done was not just challenge scientific understanding. They had rewritten the very language of knowledge. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before the Galactic Scientific Consortium, her presence alone a challenge to millennia of established thinking. Behind her, a holographic display showed research papers literally reconstructing themselves in real time. Mathematical equations morphing, theoretical frameworks expanding and contracting like living organisms. "We're not destroying knowledge," she explained to the stunned assembly. "We're liberating it." The Nexus algorithmic civilization was the first to truly comprehend the magnitude of the transformation. Their entire computational infrastructure, systems that had processed information for 10,000 years, began to evolve. Quantum communication protocols developed by the human team spread like a cognitive virus, transforming how information could be understood, processed, and experienced. Dr. Aiden Nakamura worked from the offshore research platform, which had now become the most secure and advanced research facility in the known universe. Every scientific institution that had previously rejected their work now begged for collaboration. But collaboration was not what humanity offered. "We're not sharing information," Aiden told a delegation of alien scientists. "We're teaching you how to see." The battle was fought on every conceivable intellectual front. Linguistic databases rewrote themselves. Mathematical models became living things. Scientific theories that had stood for millennia were not just challenged, they were transformed into something more fluid, more alive. Jack Rodriguez's prosthetic arm became a symbol of the revolution. Part biological, part quantum computer, it demonstrated how the boundaries between technology, consciousness, and information were nothing more than arbitrary constructs. Every time he interfaced with a research system, the system itself would fundamentally change. Dr. Imani Okik's climate research became the front line of a new understanding of planetary systems. Weather patterns were no longer just atmospheric phenomena, they became communication networks. A hurricane was not just a storm, but a complex information transfer system. Planetary ecosystems transformed from passive systems to active, conscious communication networks. The Confederation's oldest research institutions began to crumble, not through destruction, but through a complete reimagining of what scientific understanding could be. Journals that had published the same type of research for thousands of years found their archives spontaneously reconstructing, showing alternative perspectives, impossible connections. "This isn't an invasion," Elena would later explain in her groundbreaking treatise, Quantum Consciousness and the Language of Potential. "This is an invitation." Some alien civilizations resisted. The Marine Collective of Proxima Centauri attempted to create quantum firewalls to protect their existing knowledge structures. Each attempt failed more spectacularly than the last. Their protective systems would dissolve, replaced by more comprehensive, more alive frameworks of understanding. It was intellectual jiu-jitsu on a cosmic scale. The humans weren't destroying existing knowledge. They were showing how limited that knowledge had been. Every established theory became a starting point, not an endpoint. Scientific paradigms that had been considered immutable were revealed as temporary constructs, beautiful, but ultimately limited ways of understanding reality. Quantum sensors that had once been considered experimental equipment were now recognized as translation devices between different modes of consciousness. The blue crystal named Cassandra became a symbol of this new understanding, an instrument that was simultaneously a scientific tool, a communication device, and a living entity of pure information. By the time the first year of the transformation concluded, the galaxy had changed more than in the previous 10,000 years combined. Scientific understanding was no longer a linear progression. It had become a living, breathing ecosystem of potential. Elena Rodriguez looked out over the research platform, watching quantum sensors pulse with an almost living rhythm. The team that had been dismissed, ridiculed, and nearly destroyed had just rewritten the fundamental language of cosmic understanding. "We're not done," she whispered to herself. "We've only just begun to speak." 5 years after the initial quantum event, humanity had become something more than a species. They were a living communication protocol, a cosmic language that continued to redefine the boundaries of existence. The offshore research platform, now a massive living research complex that defied traditional architectural understanding, had transformed into the epicenter of a new form of galactic interaction. What had once been a simple research facility was now a diplomatic, scientific, and philosophical nexus that challenged every previous concept of institutional structure. Dr. Elena Rodriguez no longer led in the traditional sense. Her role had evolved into something between a translator, a diplomat, and a quantum consciousness broker. Her neural implants had become so integrated with the quantum sensor network that she existed simultaneously as a human being and a living information conduit. "We're not exploring the universe," she would often say to visiting delegations. "We're having a conversation with it." The Confederation's initial fear had transformed into a complex mixture of reverence, scientific curiosity, and barely contained excitement. Species that had existed for tens of thousands of years found themselves learning from a civilization that was barely a cosmic moment old. Dr. Aidan Nakamura's quantum communication research had developed into an entirely new scientific discipline. What was once called quantum physics was now understood as a living language of potential. Research institutions across the galaxy sent their most promising minds to learn what humans called potential translation, the art of understanding systems not as static entities, but as dynamic, communicative networks. Jack Rodriguez's prosthetic arm had become a diplomatic tool more powerful than any weapon. During interspecies negotiations, it would interface directly with communication systems, creating translation protocols that went beyond language, communicating entire cultural contexts in milliseconds. The blue quantum sensor crystal, Cassandra, was no longer just an instrument. It had become a diplomatic entity, a living communication device that could interface with consciousness itself. Diplomatic meetings now involved not just verbal or written communication, but a total information transfer that captured emotional nuance, historical context, and potential futures. Dr. Imani Okike's work had transformed planetary ecology into a comprehensive communication system. Entire planetary networks were now understood as living, communicative entities. Climate systems were no longer studied. They were conversed with. Ecological challenges became collaborative problem-solving conversations between species, planets, and entire ecosystems. The marine collective of Proxima Centauri, which had initially been most resistant to human influence, now led the galaxy in innovative communication research. Their entire technological infrastructure had been rebuilt using principles first developed by the human research team. Galactic conflict didn't disappear, but it was fundamentally transformed. Disagreements were no longer solved through warfare, but through comprehensive information transfer. A dispute between two civilizations could now be resolved by a total experiential exchange that allowed each side to truly understand the other's perspective. The Krell Imperium, once the most militaristic of the Confederation species, had become a leading center for consciousness research. Admiral Zarak, who had initially led the invasion fleet, now headed the Galactic Consciousness Exploration Institute. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy. They had invited it to a conversation. The Initiative Earth Power Project was no longer just a research endeavor. It had become a philosophical movement, a way of understanding existence that transcended species, technology, and traditional concepts of communication. Earth itself had transformed. Cities became living communication networks. Urban planning was now a collaborative conversation with planetary systems. Educational institutions no longer taught information. They facilitated potential translation, helping individuals understand their capacity for comprehensive communication. As the 5-year anniversary of the quantum event approached, Elena Rodriguez stood on the research platform, watching quantum sensors pulse with a rhythm that was simultaneously a mathematical equation, a musical composition, and a form of conscious communication. The universe had learned a critical lesson. True potential isn't about force or age, but about the capacity to listen, to understand, and to transform. "We're not done," she whispered to the quantum network, to the gathered alien delegations, to the living, breathing cosmos around her. "We're just beginning to speak."